Hello and welcome to Men After God, a show where men talk to men about being men. Men After God is a show produced weekly by the followers and hosted by Darius J. Without any further ado, let's get to the show. Hello and welcome to Men After God. I'm here with
Tim Barnett.
All right, glad to have you, Tim.
Glad to be here.
All right, so to start off with, when we talk about the concept of manhood, in the biblical sense specifically, what does that mean to you?
You know, manhood has a broad definition for many, but I think in the biblical sense, you can bring it down to three basic things. I think one would be obedience, two would be discipline, and then the third one would be a cause to fight for.
Okay, so obedience, discipline, a cause to fight for. How does this really tie together, and what does that end up looking like? How is that made manifest in our lives when we really apply ourselves to that?
Yeah, in the biblical sense, talking about Christianity, obedience obviously is following Christ,
Right.
being obedient to God's word, being obedient to what God asks of you. Um, and then discipline is just being disciplined enough to follow through on your walk with God, being disciplined in being obedient to Him, and choosing Him over the world. And then the cause to fight for us as Christians, that's really fighting for God in our society today, and that can look different for each individual.
Right, right. Yeah, different for each individual. For some more direct, like those directly involved in ministry,
Mm-hmm.
pastors and missionaries, or
Yeah.
um, those who work in children's ministry, for one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Others that could look like just defending their family and guiding them, right?
Yes.
So, if it's not too personal, what would you say that's looked like for you?
I think for me, from the age of I was 18 or 19
Mm-hmm.
when I really felt that I was made to be in full time ministry. I felt like that was where I felt like that was what I was here for. That's what God wanted me to do. I didn't think anything else was worth pursuing besides being in full time ministry. And so for me, that ended up actually being Christian camping ministry, which I work in right now. And where I really find my cause to fight for is raising up the next generation, discipling kids and young adults, and helping them gain the tools and the the desire to follow after God. Um, where I work at now, Indian Hills Camp, this place
Link in
has
the
been
description.
this has been a transformative place for me. This is where God has met me in many different ways, and my heart is that through serving Him here, that I would be a part of helping others have that same experience.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Um, let's shift gears a little bit here. Uh, if you could pick one man from the Bible who you've got a really deep respect for, who would it be, and what can we really go to learn about manhood from him, his life, his experience?
There's a lot of men in the Bible that we can definitely look to as great examples
Mm-hmm.
for how we want to be. Um, I think for me, David is definitely one of the ones that I look up to. And David had many flaws, um, and they're pretty blatant in the Bible. What his failings were, they were pretty public and pretty disastrous. But in the end, David loved God and he was obedient to Him.
Right.
And I think for me, that's what I want. Is I know that I'm going to make mistakes. I know that I will have failings and I won't make the right choice. But in the end, I want it to be that I love God and that I obey Him and I come back to Him.
Right. Because in the end, that was really all that mattered.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so David was called a man after God's own heart.
Yes.
And I mean, that's why we're here, men after God.
Mm-hmm.
So the way you see it, what does it mean to be a man after God? A man after God's own heart, sorry,
Great
as David
question.
was.
I would say that to be like David and for you to be known as a man after God's own heart, it comes down to that obedience. Um, Jesus, when he in the New Testament, he talks about the two greatest commandments. The first one is to love God with everything you have. I'm paraphrasing.
Right.
And then the second is just like it is to love your neighbors, love others, just like you love God.
Right. Just as you love yourself, I think.
Yeah, just as you love yourself
Right,
is the
right.
actual verse. And with that, I think that that's really what shows that you have your heart after God is it's that love.
Right.
If you have that love for God and you have that love for others, then I think that that's going to show.
Right. Yeah. If we truly have that love for Him, which is like that is most important above all, that begins to show itself in our lives, reflects to how we love and treat others, how we carry ourselves, with a bit more of a sense of gifted authority, sense of responsibility. Um, and yeah, David, yeah, you're right. He certainly made mistakes.
Yeah.
But he was given a responsibility and a position by God. And even though he knew that it was his, given to specifically him, he didn't take excessive pride over it. He waited for his time to come, and he still respected Saul, the previous king, even through all that. And yeah, I feel like that's also a big part of that kind of biblical manhood, humility, and also respect of those who, even those who are working against you and what God has planned for you.
Yeah. No, I mean, when you talk about David, people look at a few things typically with him. Man after God's own heart. You talk about how he waited for God to put him in place. He didn't force it.
Right.
Right. What you'd seen earlier in the Bible with, actually with Jacob and his mom, where God told his mom, Rebecca, I believe, was his mom.
I think so.
Yeah, Rebecca's his mom. God had told Rebecca that Jacob would be continue the line. But even with that promise, they still schemed and they still got it in their own way, rather than waiting on God.
Right.
Whereas with David, you see he waited. He refused to kill Saul when he was given many opportunities, and he obeyed Saul. He respected Saul till the end. He mourned when he passed.
Right.
And I think that's a good thing for men to learn is submission to authority.
Right.
Because we like to have our own way. We can be very prideful in that.
Right. He didn't cease defending his own and his family, but he was still willing and able to have that submission, that humility, the respect.
Even though it made his life harder.
Right, right. And quite a bit harder. All right. So last big question here. If you could give one big piece of advice to the young men of this generation, what would it be?
Things I wish I had known. Let's see. First one would be don't rush to the next phase. right? It's
Okay.
easy to desire what's coming down the road,
Right.
right? You're in high school, can't wait to be in college. You're in college, I can't wait to be done with school. Um, but you see some do this really well, where they can be present in the moment, but they can still be longing for what's ahead.
Right.
And I think that's a really valuable skill to learn, um, for every stage, is
Mm-hmm.
to be present where you are, to be fully engaged, and yet it's still okay to hope and dream and long for what's next.
Right. Because once it's passed, you can't get it back.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Jesus said, "Do not worry about tomorrow. Don't worry about what you will eat. Uh, if God feeds even the sparrows,
Mm-hmm.
um, then how much so more does He care about you?
Mm-hmm.
If God even clothes the flowers of the field, how much more shall He care upon you?"
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's while living only for the moment is a recipe for disaster, that doesn't mean not to live in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Live in it, not for it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Basically, I'd almost say don't miss what God has in front of you,
Right, right.
because there's many opportunities that we have every day where God is meeting us. God is providing for us. There's all these little miracles that happen around us that we oftentimes don't even recognize.
Mm-hmm.
And your life will be fuller if you can be grateful and for what you have right now, and be present in what you have now, even though you may still hope for other things and long for other things and dream for the future, whether that's things here on earth or things in heaven. Um, right? We do those, and those are great to do, and those are okay to do, but don't miss what's right in front of you.
Right, right. I believe it's in the book of Psalms that it's written, "Be still and know that I
Mm-hmm.
am God."
Yep.
All right, all right. Yeah, and I feel like definitely a lot of young men nowadays need to hear that. We live in such a fast-paced world.
Mm-hmm.
Our entire culture, social media, um, the way our schools are run, all
Mm-hmm.
of it is just fast-paced, constantly moving towards whatever's next, never
Mm-hmm.
stopping to. So yeah, I feel like definitely a lot of young men nowadays need that
Yeah.
to be able to.
Yeah. It's there's more distractions than there ever have been.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You
Mm-hmm.
have If you have a phone, you have so much distraction in your pocket. It's so easy to pull that out, and then you check out and you miss what's going on.
Right.
Or maybe it's you are watching life through the lens of your camera because you're recording everything and you're actually not experiencing it.
Right.
Um, it's fine to record stuff, you know, but there is something to being experiencing it for yourself
Yeah.
and being present, being there. Um, I think the longing for what's next can get you into, if you don't do it in a healthy way, it can get you into a lot of trouble,
Mm-hmm.
because then you want to find your shortcut to what's next,
Right. Right.
right? Whether that's with school, your career, uh, marriage, the shortcuts aren't worth it.
Yeah.
There's a reason that it should be a journey and a process, and you shouldn't miss what's going on right in front of you, because that your journey, your story is going to be what makes you you,
Mm-hmm.
not the end goal.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And as a Christian, we know the end goal. The end goal is that we are going to be perfect and we're going to be with Christ.
Right.
But that perfection isn't going to be what makes Tim Tim or Darius, right? That our journey, our story, the specific ways that God has moved in our lives, that's what's going to be us.
Right.
That's what builds our
Because
personality. And
we know what He's promised us.
mm-hmm.
Nothing we do here is going to make that come any faster or sooner than
Nope.
He has it planned. It's not going to make it any more or less.
Mm-hmm.
So just live with that hope and that knowledge and continue on with the path He has planned for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for being here today, Tim. It's been great talking with you. Had a lot of amazing insight.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. See you guys next week. Stay blessed. Thank you for listening to Men After God. If you're listening on Spotify, you can find us on YouTube as The Followers Fight by Faith. If you're watching on YouTube, go find us on Spotify. God bless. See you next week.